We're going to look at the buys and sells from Week 7. We're going to look at the early and afternoon slates from Sunday. We're going to look at the top performing players. We're going to look at the bottom dwellers from game to game by looking at the box scores, talking about what I saw in the red zone, and on top of that, going over the stats. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. This is the only fantasy football channel out here doing this, giving you recaps after most of the games. On top of that, we're going heavy on the waiver wire, heavier than any other YouTube channel out there. We're doing deep dives on the trending players, and we're using these videos at the end of the week to help you set your lines by looking at the matchups. Click that button right now. Ric Flair's watching you. Don't disappoint him. And hit that button and stop missing out. Our first game here, Cowboys and Detroit Lions. It did hit the over. It did score a lot of points. But, man, we just want to turn this one off. It was awful. It was awful to watch from a football standpoint. We're just going to look at the wide receivers right now. J-Mo, 3 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. He did well for you today. Tim Patrick got some love today. And we also seen Amon-Ra get that touchdown, helping him out. Jahmyr Gibbs, 3 catches in this matchup. So, again, the wide receivers did well. The ball was spread out. They were crushing it against the Cowboys. Looking at the run game here for the Detroit Lions, Dave Montgomery, after that contract extension, 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, 63 yards on the ground. Both running backs getting it done. J-Mo got a little bit of work on the ground as well. Looking at Rico Dowdle, he caught some balls, but also 5 carries for 25 yards. 5 yards per carry. Zeke was crying in the media. We were wondering if he was going to get some red zone looks. No, there was no red zone looks for the Cowboys here. CeeDee Lamb, 7 catches for 89 yards. Jalen Tolbert got some work, but not enough for good fantasy production. Rico Dowdle, like I said, caught 5 balls, 30 yards, and then after that, wasn't really much. Looking at Dak Prescott, 2 picks, 178 yards. Jared Goff, 3 touchdowns, 315 yards. Looking good for the day. Looking at the Jaguars and Bears, and Caleb Williams is coming around. He's looking good. He's been looking good over like the last 4 games or so, with 4 touchdowns in this one, 226 yards, and also coming around is DeAndre Swift. When he was in that low point, when he was averaging 1.8 yards per carry, the one thing that stood out about him is he was one of the top running backs in the league in routes ran, and now we're getting a lot of opportunity. We're cashing in week to week. On top of that, offensive line's looking better. Caleb Williams is looking better. A lot of things is gelling with this team. The Bears are 4-2. They are a sneaky 4-2 team. Nobody's thinking about that on the Bears, but we could see them in the playoffs if this keeps happening. Cole Kmet scored 2 touchdowns in this matchup. We're getting more work. We're getting more opportunities. Easy tight end 1 for the week. Keenan Allen, 2 touchdowns as well off 5 targets, 41 yards. Rome Odunze, 2 catches for 40 yards and 6 fantasy points. DeAndre Swift, another 4 balls caught, so that's 4 fantasy points, 28 yards, another 2.8 fantasy points. So we're getting it done in the passing game as well. But looking over here, the receiving game for the Jaguars, Evan Ingram's back. He's getting the workload, and we hit hard for the tight end spot in this game. We hit hard. 2 tight end ones in this matchup. Gabe Davis is back with 2 touchdowns, but I don't expect him to be a consistent asset to this team. Brian Thomas Jr., 3 catches for 27 yards. It's about time we cooled off a little bit. He's been hot. Trevor Lawrence is up and down, 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a waiver wire quarterback that you're picking up and dropping like for the whole year. Johnson got some work. Tank got some work. Travis Etienne got some work, but not enough for good fantasy production in this matchup. But again, the story is Caleb Williams. He's hot right now. Packers and the Cardinals. Packers win big, but Kyler Murray, 214 yards and a touchdown. Got some yards on the ground. James Conner went out with an injury. He had an ankle injury and he got it taped up. Came back in, but that's something to monitor throughout the week. Trey Benson got some work. 5 carries, 26 yards, so 5.2 yards per carry. Amari DeMarcado got some work as well. So if he goes down, it's probably going to be split between these 2 backs. Trey Benson has tremendous upside. He has speed to burn. 4.39, 40-yard dash at the combine. We've been watching him all season long as a stash play. And we're looking at the receiving game here for the Cardinals. Trey McBride goes off. This is a good tight end week. We're already talking about tight ends in a good light right now. Amari DeMarcado caught 5 balls in this matchup. Greg Dortch got 5 targets. Marvin Harrison Jr. went out with a concussion. You might be picking up either Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch off the waiver wire. That's something to look at, but we're going to monitor this all week long. And then we're looking at the Packers. 258 yards and 4 touchdowns by Jordan Love. He was cooking. Josh Jacobs really wasn't, but we got a big workload of 18 carries. Again, Manny Wilson is a guy to watch just in case Josh Jacobs goes down with an injury, because we're getting that workload. 7 carries is good for a backup running back. Again, though, the game script kind of pushed that for that. Christian Watson got that work. 3 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Decent for fantasy football. We got 2 touchdowns for Romeo Doubs, 1 touchdown for Jaylen Wright. The Packers wide receivers running a carousel effect, where it's usually like 3 or 4 of them sometimes, where it's random with them on who gets it, who goes off. Then there's the next guy, and then the rest of them are kind of bottom feeders when it comes to fantasy production. But it was a good day for the Packers wide receivers. Jayden Reed had an injury in this matchup, something to monitor. Dontavian Wicks, we're getting some targets still, even though we had those drops. He's a good separator, but again, there's a lot of competition in this offense. Looking at this game, we're watching James Conner, we're watching Marvin Harrison Jr., we're watching Jayden Reed. Jordan Love's looking good. Colts versus Titans, and one thing you can say is Will Levis is bad. We didn't even hit 100 yards in this matchup. Joe Flacco, 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon split up the work. Trey Sermon, how did you get 29 yards on 18 carries? It's ugly. On the red zone, you barely even knew he was out there. You're seeing a lot of Goodson. Goodson, 6.4 yards per carry. After watching Trey Sermon rush for 1.6, maybe you should have gave a few more carries to Tyler Goodson. Josh Downs going off. 7 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Mo Alley Cox, 8 fantasy points. Might be good enough to make him a tight end 1. It's tough competition this week. Michael Pittman got his touchdown. So we're back in good gracious with fantasy football managers. And then A.D. Mitchell got 4 targets in this game. He's starting to get more work week to week. You may want to pay attention to him. DeAndre Hopkins, 4 catches for 54 yards. Tyler Boyd got some work. We're looking at Treylon Burks coming back. The story here is Calvin Ridley. He's been ghost. He's been ghost, but we got 8 targets. We got 8 targets. Something to pay attention to. Those 8 targets might be a buy low for it if you want to do that. I don't know. I don't think I want a quarterback throwing 95 yards in a matchup and being like, hey, I want to buy this guy on the low. Maybe if he's super cheap or free, and maybe even off waivers. Tony Pollard got the touchdown. That saved your day. Tajay Spears not getting enough work to be fantasy viable, but Calvin Ridley is ghost. It's the Drake May Show, but it didn't happen for us for fantasy football. We threw 2 interceptions, but 243 yards passing in this matchup. We did run the ball and got 38 yards. Antonio Gibson did not hit for us in the rushing department. We did catch 3 balls for 24 yards, but did not get the job done. We did get the workload. That is what happened. That is what we predicted, because we knew this matchup was going to be weird, but you got your touches. You got that. However, on the opposite side, Joe Mixon is back. 102 yards and a touchdown. CJ Stroud, 3 touchdowns, 192 yards. Dameon Pierce is back as well. Got that 1 touchdown. Cam Akers, nevermore. Nevermore, Cam Akers. For the Texans wide receivers, we got Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, all scoring touchdowns. Joe Mixon caught a touchdown as well. Dalton Schultz, 4 catches, 27 yards on 8 targets. The 8 targets is a good indicator. You may want to pick him up off waivers. That's something to look at, because there's a lot of volume here. It just didn't hit. Tight ends are going to tight end. I say that in all the videos. Tight ends are going to tight end. They're going to do weird things. That's just how tight ends do. But the workload's there. So that's a guy you may want to play with going forward. Another thing we want to point out here is Kayshon Boutte is back. One of our favorite wide receivers from last year's class, Demario Douglas, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. On top of that, we're seeing Hunter Henry get some work as well. He scored a touchdown. That might be enough to make him a tight end 1 for the week. Jalen Polk was ghost. We were wondering if he was going to have a rapport with Drake May, because they played a lot together over a minicamp. However, Demario Douglas is still getting his. Kayshon Boutte is coming back. And now we're starting to see some competition in this passing offense. Spencer Rattler made his debut today. He started off 8 for 10, and then things got a little bit rocky in the second half. But overall, for a rookie debut as a late rounder, it was okay, not great. There were some missed plays. It was up and down, is what you would expect. We were sacked 5 times, but we were able to knock out 243 yards in the air. The thing about this, we kept it moving for the first half. We were surprisingly better than expected and scoring more points than expected, and Tampa Bay had to push the pace. That's what we saw in the game script, and also Spencer Rattler got you 27 yards on the ground. Alvin Kamara, 40 yards rushing and a touchdown. Still getting it done for you. Looking at these receivers here from Spencer Rattler, Bub Means is a guy that people want to talk up off waivers. That being said, you may want to tread that water slightly. Chris Olave, 1 catch, 5 yards. Foster Moreau got some targets. It was just spread around here. Cedric Wilson might have got a touchdown if Spencer Rattler looked his way on one of those plays where he ran up the gut and got tackled, but Cedric Wilson was open over the middle for an easy play. Sean Tucker went off. One of their favorite rookies from last year's class hit for 136 yards and a touchdown. Upside for days. Upside for days. One of the top running backs in college football back in the day, and when I mean back in the day, just a couple years ago, a guy to pay attention to fell in the draft due to a heart condition. We went to Tampa Bay. It was slow sledding, but now we're starting to get some production with Rachaad White out. It's starting to look good for him. We also caught 3 balls for 56 yards and a touchdown. He was looking good. Bucky Irving was looking good as well. 5.8 yards per carry. But Bucky Irving is getting Bucky Irving from Sean Tucker now because they like to use 2 running backs at the same time a lot of times, and they're both getting the work. Rachaad White will eventually be back and get his. I wouldn't be surprised if they try a 3-headed monster. I would definitely try that out. Tucker's got some speed. He's got some gusto. People are going to talk about him on the waiver wire this week. We already did in one of our videos. 325 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks by Baker Mayfield. If he cleaned it up a little bit, this would have been a route. This would have been a big-time route. It ended up being a route, but it would have been a quicker route. Chris Godwin got 2 touchdowns in his matchup, 125 yards on top of that, catching 11 balls. Mike Evans was quiet, but the story here was Spencer Rattler being up and down and Sean Tucker going off. Browns, Eagles, and Deshaun Watson was really bad in this matchup again, and he's bad again and again and again, but the Browns look really bad, and if Nick Chubb comes back, I just pray for him because he worked so hard to come back to this. But Deshaun Watson has been bad, and he's not getting benched, so the Browns are going to be uber bad going forward. Only 1 win on the season, and we're looking at the Eagles. Saquon Barkley, 18 carries, 47 yards. However, he caught 2 balls for 7. Not great for fantasy. We were due for that out of him. Jalen Hurts, just happy A.J. Brown's back. Threw it to him 9 times, catching it 6 times for 116 yards and a touchdown. Devonta Smith got a touchdown. Got us some fantasy production. Grant Calcaterra came in here. One of our favorite tight ends from back in the day in college football. 4 catches, 67 yards. Jahan Dotson caught a ball. He caught a ball. But Amari Cooper, 6 targets in this game. Jerry Jeudy had 3 targets. The workload was there on 23 pass attempts in this matchup. That being said, Deshaun Watson is bad. Ravens versus Commanders. This was one of the fun matchups on Sunday for Week 7. Jane Daniels looking good. Lamar Jackson looking good. Jane Daniels rushed for 22 yards. Lamar Jackson rushed for 40. Derrick Henry went off. He was King Henry, of course, in this matchup. 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zay Flowers went off for 132 yards, and he's been hot these last few weeks. Rashad Bateman is kicking it. He's good enough to tremble the lines here. 4 catches, 71 yards. A guy to look at going forward if you're really hurting at wide receiver. He's getting deep targets. He's getting those splash plays. Mark Andrews got that touchdown. 3 catches for 66 yards. Tight ends are going to tight end. And we're looking at the Commanders here. Zach Ertz, 4 catches for 68 yards. Noah Brown got some action with 8 targets. Terry McLaurin scored 2 touchdowns in this matchup. Helped you in fantasy. Austin Eckler with 4 balls caught and 21 rushing yards. Jeremy McNichols got 9 rushing yards in this matchup. Again, this was a fun one to watch. Chargers and Broncos. This one was a weird one, but one of our hitters hit, and that was Kimani Vidal. We had that receiving touchdown, allowed him to get noticed in the fantasy football streets. J.K. Dobbs is 96 yards and a touchdown, looking good. But when we look at these wide receivers, Ladd McConkey, 8 targets, but 4 for 43, so about 8 fantasy points for you. We saw Josh Palmer get some work underneath. We saw Quentin Johnston get some catches here. Also came out with an injury. That was very interesting to see. And on top of that, we look at Bo Nix. 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 216 yards. Bo Nix has the Konami code of 61 yards rushing. We're seeing him rush every week, getting you a little bit in the box score. Vele's back off 6 targets, catching 4 balls for 78 yards. Cortland Sutton is on the wrong team. They should ship him off to a contender, to a team that is looking to win the Super Bowl and get some draft picks back. Troy Franklin scored a touchdown. That's good to see the rookie do that. He's a stash play in super deep leagues. He's also a stash play in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Of course, you're stashing him. He was a main stash play. Jaleel McLaughlin caught 2 balls. Overall, this was a fascinating matchup to watch. Hassan Haskin, 2 carries. Kimani Vidal, 4. But J.K. Dobbins just got more work. But again, more work's not always good for a top running back, especially one coming back from an Achilles. Something happens, you're going to want Kimani Vidal. Steelers routed the Raiders. Justin Fields, 145 yards, but 59 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. We said he was going to get it done on the ground in our must-start video. It happened. Najee Harris got a touchdown, 106 yards. You can run on the Raiders. So why not forecast guys to run on the Raiders? That's what we did. Jaylen Warren's back. If he's on waivers, maybe you want to look at him, maybe not. But people were drafting him about a month and a half ago, so you may want him. George Pickens, 8 targets in this matchup, but 8 fantasy points, so you're not really liking that. But 8 targets is fine. Calvin Austin, 2 catches, 36 yards, and really in the passing game, that's about it. Looking at the Raiders, and it's the Brock Bowers show. 9 catches for 71 yards. We're looking at Trey Tucker, 2 targets and nothing. We're looking at the rest of the wide receivers, and we're like, meh. Alexander Madison scored a touchdown, 33 yards, 2.4 yards per carry on top of catching 5 balls. But, man, we got the touchdown. We're okay with that. And then Aiden O'Connell got a touchdown, a pick, and 227 yards. And the Steelers killed the Raiders. Falcons versus the Panthers, and there was a lot of action in this matchup. Andy Dalton ran a few times for 21 yards. Watching that on tape, on the TV, was funny to watch. I always love watching Andy Dalton run. Konami Dalton is here to stay. Chuba Hubbard, 92 yards in this matchup, 5.1 yards per carry. Always looking good. Also caught 5 balls. He's good in this offense. And him and Jonathan Brooks, I bet it's going to be a great tandem. Kirk Cousins, 225 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Algier got that work. Bijan Robinson got that work. You can run on the Panthers. And they ran on the Panthers. And that's a good look for them. And then they were up a lot in this game. So Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Darnell Mooney had the target split. 10 targets, though, for Drake London because he is the alpha. A touchdown, 74 yards. Looking good there. Kyle Pitts had a big play. 3 catches for 70 yards. Darnell Mooney got that work, but not enough for fantasy production. The story here is Deontay Johnson getting 6 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown for going 0-30 on us last week. Jatavian Sanders getting that work. Another tight end to look at. The rookie is shining here, getting some opportunities. Jalen Coker's getting some opportunities as well. Not hitting, but Xavier Legette got the score. Came back from that injury of last week. Getting back in the end zone. That's going to help you if you did start him. But we're looking at this matchup, and it was a fun one to watch considering it was a rout. But it was fun, and it was good football. That's the buys and sells from the Sunday slate. Let me know who went off on your bench down in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.